So Daniel Dubois stops Fabio Warldey in the 11th round and wins the WBO Heavyweight Championship of the World and becomes a two-time Heavyweight World Champion. Let's talk about it. Within 10 seconds of this fight, Daniel Dubois was already on the canvas from a right hook by Fabio Warldey. It was a trademark punch that Fabio Warldey throws. It's the punch that put a dent in the side of Frazer Clarke's head. However, Daniel Dubois wasn't as badly hurt by this. It was more of a flash knockdown. He got up immediately. In fact, he probably got up a little bit too quickly, to be honest. And for the remainder of the round, actually fought back pretty well. It was a 10-8 round. Daniel Dubois used his jab pretty well. Both guys were still wary of one another's power. They were trepidatious about the fact that if they overcommit, they could get countered by the other guy. The second round saw Dubois take a bit more control of the fight with his jab. He was pushing Warldey back, which is something that we saw Justice Huni also do. He was able to avoid a lot of power shots from Dubois, but he was still getting hit by a jab, which was the only punch that was consistently being landed by either guy. In the third round, we saw Daniel Dubois get dropped again by a heavy right hand. This time, Dubois voluntarily took a knee, although he was wobbled and you could see his legs stiffen up from the right hand. He retreated backwards and he took a knee. This was a little bit reminiscent to the way that he went down against Kevin Lerena and even Alexander Usyk. So that was not a very good sight to see if you were someone who was rooting for Daniel Dubois, because it looked like the writing might have been on the wall, because we've seen Dubois in that situation before. This time Dubois got back up, he fought on, he landed a very good right hand in that fight, and I think that took a bit of the momentum away from Warldey, because Warldey might have jumped on him if Dubois didn't land that right hand. And in the fourth round, Dubois had probably his best round in the whole fight, and he really took control of the fight, landing several power shots. His jab was consistent, and it really was the punch that saved Daniel Dubois in this fight. And I talked about it in my prediction video, how important that jab was. He landed it almost at will against Fabio Warldey, and that jab itself isn't a light jab. It isn't a rangefinder. It's a punch that does damage. The remainder of the fight, from round 5 and round 6, was Daniel Dubois piling it on Warldey. There was certainly a shift in the fight. Warldey was starting to become a little bit ragged and starting to lose his shape around the 5th and 6th round. He got badly hurt in the 6th round. He fired back, but Dubois, the punches didn't seem to have the same effect, and Dubois kind of bull rushed him and got the better of the exchanges, had Warldey up on the ropes, landed a few shots, a few power shots that got through. And Warldey's punches in that sequence didn't have the same effect. And Warldey was badly hurt at the end of the 6th round. And, you know, with the reputation that Howard Foster had, you might have thought he would have stopped the fight at that point. But after the 6th round onward, it was pretty much Dubois' fight. As I said earlier, Warldey had lost his shape, and he was becoming very ragged in there. And it's something we've seen Warldey do before. If you go back and watch the first Frazer Clarke fight, towards the middle, late rounds of that fight, Warldey loses his shape. His balance and his feet, they become very square. His attacks are very wild, and he's almost just fighting off fumes, and he can't really hold his stance up properly. And that was interesting for me, because I was watching quite a few people's predictions on this fight, from ex-fighters to other YouTube channels, and almost all of them said that if the fight goes past 6 rounds, Daniel Dubois would be in a lot of trouble. I actually thought the opposite. I thought Dubois had the better gas tank. I've never seen Dubois lose his shape in any fight. I've never seen Dubois become ragged. So I was a little bit surprised by a lot of people picking Warldey late in this fight, because Warldey's had a reputation of losing his shape, of becoming ragged, not Dubois. The fight went on. Warldey was fighting just to stay in the fight. It was almost like every exchange that they had was more for Warldey to show, okay, don't stop the fight, ref, rather than him fighting on even terms after about the 6th round. And I thought Dubois won every round after that. I thought the writing was on the wall, and it was honestly just a matter of time. Fabio Warldey's punches didn't have the same effect on Daniel Dubois anymore. He couldn't get away from the jab, and he was being backed up, and he really couldn't get any leverage into his shots because his legs weren't even underneath him, because he was just losing his shape. He didn't have a nice firm base underneath him, which is what you need to land good power shots. And he was also allowing the forward momentum of Dubois to also impact his power, because he wasn't able to use his own forward momentum to get power into his own shots. But by about the 11th round, the ref had seen enough, correctly stopped the fight. In fact, the fight probably should have been stopped a bit earlier. Warldey showed tremendous heart. I've not seen a fighter show that sort of heart in a long time, and showed a very good chin as well. Although he was rocked a few times, he was taking shots from Daniel Dubois. I've not seen anyone take that many shots from Dubois and still be standing. Maybe the only other guy was Hrgovic, but Hrgovic got stopped around round 7, was it? Miller got stopped round 10. Warldey got stopped in round 11, and dropped Daniel Dubois twice. So even in defeat, I don't think Fabio Warldey's stock goes down that much. The question is, how much did this fight take out of him? Because he took a lot of punishment in this fight. A lot. You would hope he's still the same fighter as he was before. And it's an interesting thing, because some fighters can take a beating like that and they're never the same. Others, they manage to recover. It's just one of those things that you'll never know. I mean, I assume the latter for Warldey, given how much heart he's shown, how good his powers of recovery are within a fight. You would assume that he wouldn't be the sort of fighter who won't be the same again after that. But I guess only time will tell. The fight pretty much went the way I saw it. I mean, I didn't think this was as much as a 50-50 as people were saying. I thought it was Dubois' fight to lose. Yeah, I really did. And I thought if he got behind that jab and he used his boxing skills and he didn't get caught with anything silly by Fabio Warldey, although he did get caught with, the right hook twice in the fight. And really that was, Daniel Dubois' corner not doing their homework, because that's his money punch. They should have known that he likes to pour out with the jab and then come around with the right hook. And you would have hoped that that was something that Daniel would have been aware of from round 1. But he wasn't. And he had to adjust to it. But once he adjusted to it and he took away that right hook, it was a bit of one-way traffic. I mean, don't get me wrong, Warldey showed heart and he was fighting back. But like I said, he wasn't fighting on even terms after about the 4th round, in my opinion. And I think other than the 2 knockdown rounds, I actually didn't give Fabio Warldey another round in there, to be honest. Yeah, I thought Dubois won a majority of the rounds. And even the rounds that he got knocked down in, like the 3rd, if you take out the knockdown, you could have maybe said it was a Dubois round. So Warldey was only ever going to win this fight with his power, and I always thought Dubois had more routes to victory. He could have won in a shootout, or he could have won by outboxing him. He had way more routes to victory than Warldey. Warldey never really had any sustained success in this fight the way that Daniel Dubois did. Yeah, he knocked him down, but you honestly take those 2 knockdowns out of it, which were just 2 punches that he landed, the most of the rest of the fight was all pretty much Daniel Dubois. In terms of where I would want to see these 2 guys go from here, for Fabio Warldey, I think he should have a fight or 2 to ease himself back into it. I don't think he should go into an immediate rematch, honestly. I think if these guys fought 10 times, I think Dubois probably beats him 7 or 8. And I thought that before this fight, and I think this fight has just reinforced it. Sure, Fabio Warldey could win. He could land a big punch, but how likely is that? I think the more likely scenario is him getting systematically broken down and beaten down just like he did in this fight. The only real path to victory he has is to land a big shot and just jump on Dubois, really. Because the more the fight goes on, the more he loses his shape, the more ragged he's become, the more he's getting busted up by Daniel Dubois' punches, the more he's also getting lent on by Dubois. Dubois actually did something very smart in this fight where when he wanted a breather, he would hold and he would kind of a little bit how like Fury did against Wilder, but not to the same extent, not to the same extreme, to kind of wear Wilder down a bit. That's what Daniel Dubois was doing to Fabio Warldey. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to see Fabio Warldey in a rematch with Daniel Dubois. Maybe have a fight or two. And I still think he's got a lot to give in the heavyweight division. There's still a lot of fights out there. Listen, styles make fights. I mean, he did beat Joseph Parker. So that doesn't mean to say he can't beat anyone else around. I would say Dubois is the best fighter he's fought. I think Dubois is a better fighter than Joseph Parker. So, and Dubois is probably a top 5 heavyweight. Could he beat another top 5 heavyweight? Who knows? Styles make fights. For Daniel Dubois, I'd like to see him fight Moses Atauma. Yeah. I mean, what a fight that would be. Atauma's a southpaw. So Dubois wouldn't be able to land his jab. And when you take Dubois' jab away, like Usyk did and like Joe Joyce did, you've seen Dubois come up second best. Will that be the case if he fights Atauma? So I'd really like to see that fight. If he doesn't fight Atauma, you could probably fight Parker, which I think would be an easier fight than the Atauma fight. I think he'd beat Joseph Parker. I've always thought he'd beat Joseph Parker. But it's still a good fight. You can't write off Parker completely. And yeah. So those are the two routes that I think these two guys could go down. I really enjoyed the fight. I hope you guys also enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think there should be a rematch? Did the fight go as you expected it? I know a lot of people picked Fabio Warldey. I think you saw in the fight reasons why you could pick Warldey because he did knock Dubois down twice. But you also saw that systematically the better fighter in there was Daniel Dubois. And that's what won him the fight, is his boxing skills. Dubois was being underlooked, I believed, in this fight. And people were just so focused on that one thing of him being a quitter. But to get him to quit ain't easy. This has proved it. And I've always thought that, yeah, he quit, but he quit against Alexander Usyk. And Joe Joyce, who was a beast back then. Joe Joyce, Olympic silver medalist. Alexander Usyk, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. These aren't just random schmucks that he's quitting against. The level of Usyk, is above a guy like Warldey. And that's why I didn't think Dubois would quit that easily, as what people were saying. Also with Warldey, I think you've got to remember some of his earlier fights. He was getting outboxed by Eric Molina. And Eric Molina, who was very short and had been knocked out badly by AJ and completely dominated in 3 rounds. He actually got hurt by him. Got hurt by Nathan Gorman. I think sometimes we forget these things and we just focus on one narrative and use that to make a prediction on the whole fight. But if you looked at it holistically, I think what we saw yesterday was what probably should have happened. Warldey's got the power and, he definitely, dropped Dubois twice, but overall, the better fighter was Daniel Dubois. I don't want to see him in there with Usyk again. Hopefully we don't see that fight. I don't think he can beat Usyk. I know a lot of people are going to come out and say, oh, well, Dubois showed heart in this fight. What if he shows heart? No. It's not that he showed heart in this fight and he didn't show heart against Usyk. Usyk's a different level. He couldn't land the same punches he was landing on Fabio Warldey on Usyk. That second Usyk fight, by the way, people need to watch that fight back. And it reminds me of a phrase that Floyd Mayweather used to say when he said, I made that look easy, but it wasn't easy. Watch that fight with the commentary turned off. And there's certain things that Usyk does in that fight, right, that not a lot of other people can do in boxing. Yeah. How sneaky he was in that fight. The way he was just taking little small steps back to, play with the range so that Dubois, when he did come in and attack, he'd fall short and bam, Usyk would come back with a counter. The understanding of distance, you need to do that and then come smack bang with a counter. The hand-eye coordination, the way he would pivot off the ropes to, control the geography of the fight, the feints that he was using, that little up jab that Daniel Dubois didn't even know where on earth it was coming from. These are little things that, how many other fighters in the heavyweight division can do that? Not many. So, yeah, I think we need to put a bit more respect, I think, on Usyk's name. That doesn't mean to say Usyk's unbeatable. I think Usyk is now 39, and, I'd love to see him fight Caballero. I think that's an interesting fight, but I don't think Dubois is the man to beat him, so I don't want to see him fight Dubois again. I'll leave it at that. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.